Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. It's 30th of September, 4:19 a.m. I'm shattered. I want to go to bed. I'm ready to collapse. But you guys have been asking me for a while for a Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo preview, as well as a preview for another fight, which I'm surprised has proved so popular among you guys. I'm delighted to hear it because I'm a bit of a Gassiev fanboy. But Murat Gassiev against Otto Wallin. So we're going to get technical and break down both fights. With regards to Canelo Alvarez, we'll start off there with the big one against Jermell Charlo. A number of people have spoken about the potential size difference. Canelo, of course, has been operating at 168 pounds. Jermell Charlo jumping up from light middleweight. People are saying this is far too big of a jump. Canelo Alvarez should absolutely destroy him. The truth is there isn't that much of a natural size difference between them. Derek James, the trainer of Jermell Charlo, has spoken about the fact that he believes both of them are 154 pounders naturally and have blown up to that level. Well, maybe that was once the case for Canelo, but the truth is he's bulked up now to the point where he could no way make 154 pounds. Even 160 would be a massive push for Canelo. So the truth is he's probably bulked up and grown into a natural super middleweight now. He looks small at light heavyweight, but at super middleweight stroke middleweight, he's somewhere in that sort of position there. I'd say he's naturally at 168 now. Whereas with Jermell, although he has been operating at light middleweight, he was always massive at the weight. And he's been bulking himself down in some ways to get to that. And I hate the phrase usually, the walking around weight, because fighters often will walk around at a weight that's unnatural in terms of their athletic peak, because out of camp they're eating badly and they're getting out of shape. Kell Brook, for instance, was probably a cruiserweight in terms of his walking around weight, right? So I've never really bought into that. But if you're talking about their walking around weight when they're fit and healthy, then there isn't a massive size gap between them. Somebody was telling me on Twitter that they thought that Jermell Charlo was looking fleshy at the weigh, and I thought he looked superb. If Jermell Charlo with an 8-pack bulging is looking fleshy, then I don't know what to tell you. I'm never going to the beach again. Next thing you'll be telling me this dude's got a dad bod. I think he's in terrific shape. I do not buy into any of the narrative where people have been saying they think he looks shook, he looks afraid. He was trying to put his hat on at one point and he was like sort of messing with it to get it on. And I think he was trying to find the right sort of position on his head, the right area for his hairline. And people were saying, look, he's trembling. He doesn't look scared to me at all. He looks very confident. Undisputed versus undisputed. These are top level operators that have been at the highest level. But whilst size doesn't matter when it comes necessarily to what he's capable of dishing out, in other words, he is a wonderful athlete. He's built up to the weight seemingly really, really well. I've got no doubt the speed's going to be there. The fast twitch muscles, the athleticism. Where size does matter is your ability to absorb a shot. Even if you're a big power puncher whose power will carry as you go through the weight categories, what you can take in return, that can matter. And Canelo Alvarez has proven to be a puncher certainly at super middleweight, and even at light heavyweight. He stopped Sergey Kovalev, and with Dmitry Bivol, everybody makes out that that fight was somehow this demolition. It wasn't. And bear in mind, I'm a guy that picked Dmitry Bivol to win the fight. In fact, my exact words were something along the lines that if they're both at their best, I can't see how Canelo Alvarez is going to win this fight. So this is not me being some sort of Canelo fanboy or anything, but let's not pretend that Dmitry Bivol was just walking through punches. Early on, he was covering up, tucking up when those shots were flying, and then he would step out and move away. He wasn't looking to punch with Canelo Alvarez. And when he was letting go of combinations, he was very acutely aware of distance control. And when Canelo was showing upper body movement on the ropes, you saw that Bivol was not overly committing to big shots. They were still straight shots with a lot of flurries. And he was outlanding Canelo, and he definitely won the boxing match without a shadow of a doubt. But he wasn't looking to get up close, get head control, start throwing these hooks and uppercuts. He understood what was potentially coming back was dangerous. So when you're used to being hit by light middleweights, the likes of Harrison and Castano and so on and so forth, then you're going to start getting punched by a puncher at super middleweight and potentially even a guy who's a puncher at light heavyweight. The world's completely different, right? And that could certainly play a part. But from a technical perspective, let's talk about some of the things that Canelo Alvarez likes to do. He will come forward and probably be a pressure fighter against a man who is taller than him. But he's not the sort of pressure fighter that runs in and seeks to take punishment in order to give his own punishment. He is what I call a counter-punching pressure fighter. He will put himself in a position where you either have to punch or you're going to be punished. Or you feel as though he's going to work, even though he hasn't got a plan to throw anything at that moment, and he causes some panic. And from there, he seeks to counter you, to capitalize on your mistakes. If you're going to commit to a shot to keep him off, he will capitalize on that. If you're going to seek just to pity pat and move away. He'll slide across with you and he keeps that pressure on. And he's very, very good at operating this system because Canelo has some limitations from a physical perspective. He hasn't got the fastest feet. He's never had the fastest feet. And what he tends to do is use this pendulum-like entry point where he'll step in with his front foot and he'll lean forward with a high guard and he's threatening to come in and then not, and then that back foot follows. And when he leans forward and he's got that weight shifted onto that front foot, from there's a variety that he can bring to his game. From there, he can shoot an up jab. He can either pull back and then jab off the beat. He can lean forward, pull back and not do anything. He can lean forward and if you throw a shot, he'll slip to the side for a big counter power punch. He can stay there and as you commit, he'll literally drag that back foot as a short little shift forward and then from there shift the angle to come up with another power shot too. In other words, he's very, very difficult to read and he's constantly changing that dynamic. He can also just lean back and see a shot whiz by him. And things like that can really dent your confidence. Now, through that high guard, if you're finding a home for the jab, something Bivol was able to do, Gennady Golovkin was able to do very well, that's great. But even landing a second phase of attack is very difficult against Canelo Alvarez. And he then shoots these big shots. He really loads up on his shots. So even if you're out jabbing him, there will be many observers who might say, you've landed 4 jabs, but his one power shot to the body, they might actually give more credence to that. I'm not such a guy. If it's a solid jab that's snapping his head back, you've got to give that respect. But the point I'm making, even if he's potentially losing exchanges, there are many observers who really like and resonate with the style of Canelo Alvarez. And if you seek to spin off and step out, he'll rip those wide body shots. Against Charlo, he's up against a guy who we know is very, very athletic and he's got a very nice jab. One of the things with Charlo's jab, though, is that he'll often twist into it quite significantly. There's a real twist into it. So it makes, generates a lot of power. But there's also a commitment when it comes to that. And when you're up against a counterpuncher like Canelo, there's a potential that he'll start to see that jab countered. If he varies committing and then just using it as a throwaway, using it just to affect the eyesight of Canelo, using it as head control, if he's varied with that lead hand, and he starts to make Canelo uncertain about when to be able to counter, you can potentially see him start to use some really nice lateral movement and start to get the better of Canelo in the early exchanges. He's going to have to be very, very smart at being able to keep it long and move around the ring. Now, one of the things that Jermell Charlo also tends to do, a bit of a Derek James technique, I think, because Errol Spence does it, he tends to just touch his chin almost onto that left shoulder. And as he'll work from there, and he's almost protecting that left shoulder, that chin with that left shoulder. Now, that's potentially a decent thing to have, because if he does commit to the jab and Canelo slips and throws a hook, you're partially potentially protecting your chin. But because as he fights in that way, he can fight sort of upright, so that even if he stays in this position and he comes off slightly to the side, he's still quite, just off the center line, but upright. And with Canelo being able to change that height dynamic, rather than throw a left hook, he literally might start slipping and throwing wider right hooks. Or he literally might come down and throw an over the top right hand. So even when Charlo is going to be winning the battles on the outside with superior athleticism and foot speed and potentially hand speed as well, you can see that Canelo Alvarez is going to be loading up with some big shots. And with the misdirection he uses in the variation, he can end up catching Charlo with something big. Where I do think Charlo could have some real success, though, is as he pivots to turn out and Canelo's using that sort of high guard and rocking motion forward, he's got a really nice uppercut, Jermell Charlo. So if he can start to land these sorts of shots, at that sort of power shot sporadically, you don't want to make anything a pattern against Canelo because he'll read it. But if you can keep things long, avoid trying to exchange at mid-range. Don't get into these scenarios where you're throwing 3s and 4s. 1s and 2s, 1, 2, 3s, even if he's blocking them, even if they're partially landing, get on your bike. You don't want to be moving away too fast, too much though. You've got to make him respect your power early. Now, whether that comes through the form of an uppercut or a big backhand, that's fine. But you have to land something early to make Canelo a little bit tentative about just running after you. And if he can do that, he can start to potentially build up a bit of a lead. The problem that he's going to have is that I believe he'll be getting caught with individual sporadic pot shots to the body, to the ribs, to the biceps, which Canelo can do an awful lot of damage with. Now, If that happens and he starts to slow down and Canelo's able to come inside, what Charlo tends to like to do is have a little bit of a firefight. And when he does have a bit of a firefight and he's up on the ropes, for instance, in that position, he does like to change the levels a lot. And from coming down, he could be in a position where he's come low to try and evade a shot. From there, he actually loads up with a punch. So he can actually be dangerous in those areas. There was a clip when he was fighting Castaño, for instance, where Castaño was opening up on him on the ropes. And you're thinking, oh, what's going to happen here? Is Castaño going to get him into trouble? And instantly, Charlo's able to turn it around and go straight after him, right? He's got a lot of dog in him, Charlo. And if they're exchanging together, the superior athleticism of Charlo might see him land first. The problem is, even if he lands a split second before Canelo, if they're landing on each other and he's not used to absorbing what Canelo can dish out, you can end up seeing Charlo in real trouble. Now, as the fight wears on, like I said, that technical aspect could start to suit Canelo, but Canelo does have some stamina issues. He throws an awful lot into his shots, big power shots, and he's used that cleverly in recent years to be able to be economical, because he makes his opponent nervous about what's coming his way. He loads up on everything early on so that it makes you move, and by you moving constantly and almost in a panic state, he's able to conserve energy. Bivol didn't allow him to do that. If Charlo can replicate what Bivol did and make Canelo work when he doesn't want to work, and he can use that athleticism to stay away and largely avoid punishing shots early on, it could actually be Charlo who's looking the fresher in the last stretch of the fight. However, I just think that he's in uncharted territory in terms of what he's going to be able to absorb. I think Canelo Alvarez is far too clever with how he sets up individual punches. And I think the right hand is going to be the key shot for Canelo Alvarez. I've seen a lot of people talk about the left hook to the body. And of course, the left hand of Canelo's is very, very educated. That counter left hook's a lovely punch too. But I just think with the way that Charlo tends to move and dip his temple to one side slightly, I think you're going to see either a right hand over the top or a right hook that could potentially change the world for Jermell Charlo. And I think in the middle to latter rounds is when you're going to see Canelo Alvarez potentially land something big and take Jermell Charlo out of there. If that happens, of course, it's a wonderful result for Canelo Alvarez. You've got to give him props. But by the same token, if Charlo puts in a really good account for himself, you've got to give him major props too, because he's been inactive and he's jumping up. And as that phrase goes, daring to be great. And it's undisputed versus undisputed. And listen, I can't wait for the fight. Let's move on from that and let me know in the comment section down below what you think of that. Let's talk about Murat Gassiev and Otto Wallin. This is a fight that I'm not actually going to get to see live because my brother and his missus have decided to arrange a little night out for us. And I love them dearly, but bloody hell, man, how can you make me miss a Gassiev fight? It's been such a long time since Murat Gassiev's been involved in any sort of significant fight. And I've been very critical of the B status guys in the heavyweight division. Most of them, not named Joyce and Zhang and Dillian White, haven't really been taking consistent risks. And so when these guys are up against each other taking a risk, I'm thinking I'm really liking this fight, and these lot have arranged a night out. I might have to fake my own death or something, fake a kidnapping, make it like I've been taken to some basement or something. I didn't make it out till Sunday morning, and I'm really sorry, but I'll make it up to you in the future. But how do I think this fight will go? Well, Murat Gassiev is a guy who I'm a big fan of. I'm not going to lie. I love the way he carries himself. His hooking, man, that technique, the way he generates the torque. There's so much aggression that goes into it. He's got such natural power with it as well. Even the straight shots, that right hand, that straight right hand, he's very clever with the left hand too. If you go and watch the Lebedev fight, that's a really good fight to watch, by the way, who was a really good southpaw, you could see that he would pat down the lead hand and come over the top with a power jab. I'm not sure that's going to be there for him against a taller guy like Otto Wallin. But the point is, his individual punching, the technique and the power is sexy, man. There's no doubt about it. Have you guys seen that movie, American Psycho, where Christian Bale is in the bedroom at one point and he's making love to one of the women that he meets, and instead of looking at the woman, he's staring at himself in the mirror and he's tensing and he's posing and that would be me if I could hook like Murat Gassiev, right? I would film myself punching a punching bag and I would have that on in the background. Forget the lovely music and the sexy music, forget all that. That's me in the background. She can just do whatever she needs. I'll take care of her, don't worry about it. But I'm focusing on myself hooking that bag. It is a sexy hooking technique. But listen, if he lands on anyone flush, they're in serious trouble. For me, Gassiev is naturally one of the biggest punchers in the sport of boxing. With the exception of Deontay Wilder's right hand, long right hand, I'm not convinced that there's a bigger puncher in the heavyweight division. Zhilei Zhang's up there, of course. Anthony Joshua's a really big puncher. Daniel Dubois carries power. Jalilov carries power. I'm telling you now, if Murat Gassiev lands one of those hooks on left or right on any man, they are going to sleep if he's landing flush. The problem that he has, and this is why I've got so much respect for Gassiev for taking this fight, and also Wallin, to be honest with you, for making such a dangerous fight, is that stylistically, I look at what Wallin does, and this could be a tricky night for Gassiev. You see, Gassiev's a little bit of a plodder. And as he's become a heavyweight, he's actually become slower of foot. He's not as fast of foot now as he was when he fought Lebedev. And what he tends to do is cover up when the other guys go into work. He doesn't have the jab or the balance or the technical brilliance of somebody like Gennady Golovkin. But you know how Golovkin used to be a big banger and then cover up, and you'd go to work, and then when you're done, he'd go and he'd follow you out? That's kind of like Murat Gassiev. Gassiev's defense isn't quite as good as Golovkin's either. Don't get me wrong, okay? I'm not comparing these guys like on a pound for pound sort of level. I'm just trying to explain the methodology in which he works is that when you're going to go, I will cover up and take a step back. I'll use that high guard. I'm not going to give you anything clean to land on. And then I'm going to go. I'm either going to go right after you've gone, or if I have to lead, then I'll lead. But if I land, my individual shots are going to be worth a lot more than yours. I'm going to break you. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to break you. That's his philosophy. Now, with a guy like Otto Wallin, who's a naturally big heavyweight, and if you look at these guys at the weigh-in, and you can look at the little thumbnail that I've put up, there's a significant size difference here. If Gassiev is unable to get to Wallin consistently, what you're going to potentially see is Wallin from a southpaw position really use the jab just to fiddle and mess around with Gassiev, keep him engaged, stay safe, use the backhand sporadically, pivot out to his own right, and stay away from Gassiev and frustrate him. And if that happens, you're going to start to see a bit of a lead being built up because Gassiev is a plodder. And Gassiev will then start to throw these big, solid shots, looking for an individual shot to try to change the trajectory of the fight. He's very capable of doing it. And one of the things he's capable of doing is throwing this really nice left low hook to the body. And Lebedev will testify to this. On the exit, as he's coming out, as he's trying to spin out from that right-hand side, he'll just catch you to the ribs. And he also hurt Alexander Usyk with a nice little left hook as well around the guard. So even Usyk, who's the only guy to beat Gassiev, who is a much, much, much better version of Otto Wallin, even he got caught at one point. So the question is, how successful is Wallin going to be at keeping him at bay for 12 rounds? Well, the one advantage that Wallin has over Usyk is size. He's bigger. He's longer. So, yeah, his feet aren't as fast, but it's possible that Gassiev will really struggle to get inside, pin him, and start to throw those hooks. Having said that, he is quite good at timing you with a straight right hand as well. So how do I see this fight going? I think Wallin will frustrate him, will build up a lead. I think if you're a Gassiev fan, you might start to panic after 3 or 4 or 5 rounds. You're going to be saying, I don't like the way this is going. This is not going my guy's way. And then all of a sudden, I think you're going to see the world change. I think something will land from Gassiev. He'll find his range, and I think he'll end up hurting Wallin. It won't necessarily be a one-punch thing where he's knocked him out of one shot, but one shot could change the trajectory of the fight. He could hurt him, buzz him, which he will then struggle to recover from, and then start to get broken down, or he could potentially get taken out with one shot. But there's dynamite in those knuckles. He's called Iron Murat Gassiev, and I suspect he's kind of like Wolverine, where those bones are made of metal. And I think ultimately he'll probably get to Otto Wallin, even though Wallin is stylistically all wrong for him. If he doesn't, I think Wallin will win the fight wide on points. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about all that we've spoken about. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on that subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.